Hello. Welcome to another edition of COGS, the Critics of Global Systems. I'm your host, Mr. Skeptic, and tonight we are having a special edition. We are taking closer look at globalization. With me today is our guest, Ms. Neoliberal. She is the CEO of Globocorp and a self-proclaimed expert on globalization. Welcome, Ms. Neoliberal.
Hello Mr. Skeptic, and thank you for having me on the show today.
I would like to share a quote with you from the former Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Kofi Annan. He said, "It has been said that arguing against globalization is like arguing against the laws of gravity. We must make globalization an engine that lifts people out of hardship and misery, not a force that holds them down." How does that strike you?
Mr. Kofi Annan is a brilliant statesman and leader. He sees globalization as a force to be experienced by every nation, and I concur. It is not a force of nature, but a human-induced force. And if we can create it, then we can manage it.
So you are saying that we can manage globalization?
In fact, I have been managing it for quite a while now.
Our watchers at home might not be familiar with your position at Globocorp. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. About 25 years ago, I was the major agenda of United States President Ronald Reagan and British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. Using my management principles, I have guided states and the public sector to become the leading economic development model in most of the nations around the world. Today, I am responsible for setting the driving pace of globalization.
That sounds like a great deal of responsibility and effort. To my understanding, globalization is the free flow of goods, services, capital, investment, foreign direct investment, ideas, and people. You spoke of driving the pace of globalization and your principles. What are those principles?
My economic model was not established in a single night and grew from several ingredients. Think of it like a well-blended recipe: a little bit of Reaganomics, a heaping scoop of Washington consensus, and equal amounts of Thatcher's there is no alternative policy or Tina. Give it mix, and add in the private sector lobbying as the catalyst. Let it ferment a bit, and you will see that I have produced enough through my policies, so that everyone may have a share. But it is my 4 special ingredients, my core principles, that make everything turn out right. Liberalization, privatization, deregulation, and austerity are the keys to being a successful neoliberal.
Good thing I'm just an talk show host, and not an economic cook. I would make a terrible mess in that kitchen. Those principles of yours sounds familiar.
Don't be so hard on yourself. You were partially right. My principles sound familiar because I studied under liberalism, although now I have stepped out from under its shadow.
Have you heard the phrase, "Too many cooks in the kitchen spoils the pie"? Have you always been the only cook in the kitchen, after branching away from liberalism?
During my early years, I had to share the stage with realism and Marxism, but once I took over I fired them. They are still working in some places, but that is only a matter of time.
Ms. Neoliberal, you seem extremely confident in yourself. Might I remind you that the United States and others still practice quite a bit of realism? For them, national security will always trump economic development.
This is true, but we should not be concerned with such things. National security tends to be a short-term element, and as globalization prospers we will enjoy a greater sense of peace. National security scares should lessen under my watch.
So globalization is a good thing?
Yes. Not only does it lead to peace through the integration of economies, but it also spreads ideas like technology, democracy, and other cultural values.
Peace is wonderful. Who does not want peace? But should we be careful? I have heard that globalization is responsible for increasing the income gaps between the haves and the have-nots. Additionally, spreading ideas can create a backlash. Have you ever thought about the clash of cultures, and that this might just be an evolved form of imperialism, just like neoliberalism is an evolved form or mercantilism?
Careful with your words, sir. Neoliberalism is not some new wave of imperialism or mercantilism.
Alright, calm down. I'm sure you would agree that China is suppressing its currency and the United States is not, but I digress. So good or bad, is globalization here to stay? Do we have any options to retreat, reform, or rebuild?
Yes, globalization is here for good. Thomas Friedman said that it is flattening the world. This of course is figurative, but I agree with him. The speed at which we are flattening depends on how quickly states embrace my model in its entirety. Personally, I do not think retreating can or should happen. Reforming and rebuilding are possible, although they are simply too complicated given all the global stakeholders.
Great. Earlier this week in preparation for the show, I went to your headquarters and spoke with each of your 4 principals. Meanwhile, I had our field correspondent Magnum do a bit of investigative field work to look at some of the effects. I would like to share those experiences with you and our viewers at home. When we get back we will bring on another guest to see if neoliberalism has been the right course all along. Let's take a look.